Hey guys, I had mentioned this morning that I'm going to have a pretty fun recap for today. I wanted to let the last of the trades play out before I recorded the recap, and they did just that. So I wanted to take the time to recap the 3 trades I took today. One on the Russell, one on the S&P, and one on the pound dollar. So we'll start with the one on the Russell. This one was a quick one. You can see that right at market open, we've got, well, first of all, we've got a bunch of structure, a bunch of support, resistance, and this comes into importance later. But for me, we've already gotten up and started to make our downward move here. We've already, if you go back 2 videos or one video, the last video I posted, I show why I entered less. So I entered short, and I had taken that trade off, but I was looking to re-enter short. Now, where was I looking to re-enter short? Well, I was looking from right here down to the low. So we've got our 78.6 retracement. We've got some structure right there, and because it's the because it's a volatile day. Yellen was speaking. We had an FOMC speech. We had substantial volume market open, and we pushed right up to those levels. So I actually entered short right here. I'll actually have to double check my entry. 1400 half. So I got in at 1400 half, and so it was right here. Let's see, 1400 half. So I entered right here. So I took a little bit of drawdown. I'll highlight my entry in blue. Just a little bit of drawdown. Now I open up every trade with a 2-point stop loss. So 1400 half, I ended up having 1402 half as my stop loss. And let's see. So now I wanted to get into just the trade management of this, right? So stop loss indicated in red. It was really quick, honestly. It was a very quick trade. It was really quick into profit. So once we made this initial spike up, we were down back below the 61.8 and the that little purple resistance level there almost instantly. So for me, it was Friday. I had a good week. I wasn't really willing to give much back, and at first glance, this was going to be a scalp for me. So I pulled my stop loss down roughly to 1398. I think it might have been 1398 half is where I pulled it down to, and then we just kept going. So as we blew through this level, right, I kept my stop loss there. Then we blew through this level and gave a little bit of retracement and had some bears again. So I pulled my stop loss down right there. And so I was sitting right around 1396 half now. And once we got through there, I ended up just letting it ride all the way down. I let it trickle around here for a little while, and I got out on a little bit of a spike down, and I ended up getting out right where it double bottomed there. So I ended up pulling that trade. For 1400 half all the way down to 1385.9, and I ended up with just under 3,000 on that one. So that was a $2,940 trade, and it happened, as you can see, quite literally in a matter of minutes. And I pulled my stop loss back up just before I exited it, in the off chance that it spiked. I didn't want to get taken out right there. So let's see. Next up, I wanted to go over one of the more fun trades I think I've done, and it just works out in the sense that it was pre-planned pretty much to perfection. So we opened up the day on ES, and we had made a lower high. We had made lower highs consistently and found a bottom. So we found a bottom right around here. And so once we found our bottom and we pulled up and we ended up testing this high and we kind of established a range, I liked that range. I like that range a lot. So once we got that range high, don't mind the two price levels kind of matching. Actually, you know what? Let's just use that blue price level as our range high so that we don't confuse anything. So if we zoom in a little bit closer, you can see that I've got a blue price level on here at 2380, and I've got a time level. Now, why do I have those? Because that seems a little bit out of the ordinary, for when we're down here. because we've already made our move down, and if you know me, you know that I'm typically an in the money, at the money trader. So that strike would seem a little bit off. Well, the strike itself was a guideline, or was a target for a magnet that we had. Okay, so I opened up the day, and I was actually, my initial plan was at market open, we spiked all the way up here, and we got a good enough retracement that I was going to look to short somewhere around here. That we didn't get that. Instead, we tanked down, and price had been kind of right around here, and it tanked down. But to me, that level was still valid. So if I went to a shorter time frame, right, the stock was kind of in the middle with a little bit of momentum pulling up. So I ended up going down to the 30-minute and the 15-minute chart, and I started plotting for some targets. So now if we pull our fib tool off of this last little impulse move down, and we find our bottom, we've got a 61.8 retracement that hasn't been tested yet. And it gets close, but that's after the fact. So, or that's beside the point. The 50% gets tested, but the 61.8 never gets fully tested. So we dive a little bit deeper off of these lows. We pull up to the highs that it made. We can see that price never really closes below that 78.6. It tries and it spikes down, and I got in on one of these spikes. I got in at 1034, so at the tail end of this candle right here on the spike. I got down when the price was testing right around here. But what did I do? I didn't get in at the money. I didn't get in the money. I ended up grabbing an out of the money on a daily for 23.80. That's why that's there. So I grabbed an out of the money on the daily for 23.80, and I ended up grabbing it for $24. So it was low risk, right? I had 20 contracts, $24. Essentially, had I lost this trade and had it gone against me, it would wipe out roughly one of my Nadex wins from the week. So for me, I was able to leverage my good week and my my previous trading this week into a targeted risk, if you will. So what I did was I entered along here, the 23.80 for 23.80 for $24, and pulled up this trend line after we had started moving up. Okay, so we got the 78.6 retracement. We bounce off of that nicely, bounce off of this trend line once, twice, thrice, and then we keep going up. And now we're just testing levels. So I had a mental stop in mind, right? I had a mental stop in mind the entire time. So I'm going to start off with my mental stop below this structure. Let's change this to a red so that we identify where our stop should be. Okay, so with Nadex you have to have a mental stop. So I have my mental stop here. Actually, I believe it was this one, but regardless. Then as we continued to pull up, I just kept dragging my mental stop up. So as we pulled up, and I wasn't watching P&L at all throughout this time, throughout this movement here. I wasn't watching P&L. I'm going to get rid of the fibs for just a minute so that I can more clearly identify a few things. So as price was moving up, I just kept watching. I just kept this chart up, just kept it off in the corner of my screen, just watching it tick up, and it kept respecting, and eventually had a tough time breaking through here at 23.80, but I wasn't really willing to take the profits off just then. So this is when Yellen was speaking this little weird doji, and I ended up just holding throughout its entirety because I had my mental stop in place. And as we eventually pushed up and started making runs past this 23.80, and I started to see my P&L, and I was expecting my P&L was moving a little more towards over $50 a contract. Now, keep in mind I paid 24, so I'm already at a 1-to-1 R to R. Now I'm just pulling my stop up as structure is respected. And in the end, I ended up having this trend line as a target. I did not ride it all the way up to this trend line. I rode it up to this candle on this last push past this structure and up to this structure. So I got out at the test of this structure. But you can see that the ARTA that I had on that was absolutely crazy, right? So I had 24 price contract, or 20 contracts at $24. So roughly 450, 80, I don't know, 400 and something, just under $500. So I ended up with the 2-to-1, or 1-to-2 risk to reward there, and ended up just over. So it was like 1 to 2.25, I guess, if you will. But I ended up pulling just over $1,000 on that one, just with a simple out of the money and some targeted entries. And it's fun when you get to be able to pick your spot like this. So I was picking my spot, picking the target, and riding it up. And you can see how beautifully it worked. Finally, I wanted to highlight a trade that I took, and you can see well in advance what I was looking at here. Well in advance, I was looking at this on the pound dollar. I had my buy zone set. I knew that this was going to offer some resistance, and then once we eventually spiked down here, we were going to get a nice move off of it. And sure enough, right, so this is 2 days ago, I believe, 2 days ago, that I was looking at going long on the pound dollar. And sure enough, today, look at that, we get our resistance right at the negative 23.6, and we push straight through. Let's get rid of this so you can see just how to the tick it was, right to our trend line, right to our channel bottom, and then off it goes. And I ended up pulling, I just closed this out, I ended up pulling 60 pips out of it, so just over $600 from me on that one. So, you know, I took 3 trades today. They were all pretty much pre-planned or had a very strong purpose, and they were very well thought out. And that's the point I want to get across, is you don't need a ton of stuff on your charts. You don't need a tick chart that runs through and has 17 rules for entry, and you have to wait until this changes over. It's just, you don't need it. So for me, I'm leaving my charts simple. I'm looking at what price is doing, and as a result, it's giving me an accurate representation of, you know, the bigger market picture. And that's why I'm able to leverage the out of the monies. That's why I'm able to leverage spot Forex. And that's why I'm able to do so and find an edge. It's not that difficult. You all can do the same. And I'm hoping that these videos show that, and show just how powerful it can be. So I'm going to stop it. A bit of a longer video. If you have any questions, comments, as always, let me know.